1977 GXL Ford Fairmont and a 302. We got flat top Luke on the job. He's crawling under the car. Tow truck up there. I had to squeeze in this little gap. Got too much booty for that. This steering wheel is already a little mouldy and gross, and it smells very wet in here. Let's get it out of the container and see how it looks. Alright, we've got it this far out. The rear brakes are locked on, so we're just trying to rejig some things and pull it off the container and onto the truck. It is horribly stinky inside this thing. It's very gross. The steering wheel is all moldy. It really stinks. You can tell this bloke's an old wolfie. Fish watch, I fish and I vote, and a union sticker. Alright, so I got the Falcon on the truck. This back wheel's locked on, so we need to free that up because it's going to be really hard to get it off the truck. We're home. So we got the Falcon in the shed yesterday, and I haven't looked at much. It's got a 4.9, which is a 302, and XA Coupe guy, or XB sedan chap, as I like to call him, he reckons that I'll get this running no worries. So we'll have to get into it, but I haven't really looked just yet. Okay, so after speaking to the original owner, this thing has had an upgraded trans cooler. It's had a few bits and pieces like gas, it's got air conditioning, it's got a valve saver lubrication system that automatically feeds it into the engine. And it's just a bit weird. He used to use this thing for towing, used to tow his boat all over the country. So this was a workhorse back in the day. It wasn't a cool hot roddy thing like it is today. So this has the wonderful thermal quad carburetor, so the plastic housing carburetor, which is going to be fun. So I'm pretty sure that's not going to work, and I have got a Holly lined up for it. I have to buy an adapter plate, but let's see if we can make this thing work first. Before we get too carried away, let's have a look inside. But this thing is moldy. So I'll open the door and I'll hand over to Jackson and he can tell you about the inside of this thing.
I've never really done much with old Falcons, you know.
Me neither.
This is really new for me. Oh, jeez, it stinks.
It's moldy.
You know what it smells like?
What?
It smells like a rubber duck filled with burnt hair.
Look at that seat. Look how moldy the side of that seat is.
Do you have any respirators?
I should probably get some. Currently this is the only door that opens, so we have to look into that as well. And I can't put the windows down.
Well, I'm sure you can.
Well, I'll get there, but yeah.
Damn, man.
Yeah.
It's a stinky car.
Yep.
It's very cool though. 91,880. That's a big doubt there. Well, let's have a look at the brake pedal. Hey man, that might be legit, hey. The best way to tell K's is you look at the seat, rip. You look at the brake pedal, well, it's probably just been replaced. What do you reckon?
I don't reckon.
191?
Probably. He said that one of the cars had low Ks, so it might be this one. Because he thought the Commodore had, sorry, the Berliner had 90,000 Ks on it. And it doesn't, this one does.
Yeah, it's got 90,000 Ks on a 5-digit odometer though.
Oh, yeah, it's 191.
Yeah, it is. Well, unless he got out of it 6 times a day.
6 times a kilometre.
Well, it is a V8, so it's probably, you know, fueled up
Every
every time
mile.
he drove it. It's like a tape deck over here.
We'll dig into that when we get the car out of the shed.
Yeah, you Ford guys are probably just like, oh, you bloody course it's go on there. Where else would you expect it to be? The Fords are weird for us.
I like Toyotas and Jackson likes Volkswagens.
I used to love it. Well,
You still like Volkswagens.
yeah.
We're probably the weird ones. Fords are pretty normal.
You know, I haven't had a Golf in like 5 years. I
Shame
sold
on
my
you.
last one in 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
You need a Golf.
Anyone with a Mark 1 Golf out there, hit me
Yeah.
up.
Sell us a Mark 1 Golf.
At Jackie Mellon.
or in the comments, whatever.
Bleep it down in the comments. If you've got a
We'll
mark
buy
on
it.
Golf.
Were all Falcon door handles bad, or is it just all of them? So this door is currently locked.
Oh.
And you can, oh, maybe. All right, so this door's locked. If I pull the lock up, it locks itself again. So, not sure what's going on, but this one doesn't want to open. That's a later problem. Let's go back to the engine bay. So this looks like a bit of fun. The plugs are sort of awkward to get to. Shouldn't be too bad. This carbie's super corroded or gross. Where do we start?
At the beginning, mate.
Drop the oil, drop the plugs, put some lube in there.
Well, see if it turns first.
Do we want to? Do you want to put fresh oil on it first?
No, see if it spins, see if it rotates.
All right. It does.
It rotates.
Yep, quite easily.
No, a good thing if it's that easy.
It's got like compression spots in it, so it's not
okay.
end of the world. But it does spin, so that's nice. If you haven't seen the VK video, go watch that first and then watch this one. So we got some leftover stuff here. So we got 2 oil filters, we got brake fluid, coolant, spark plugs, times 8. We got some points, we've got a fuel filter, leads, a couple of belts, and engine oil. So we're gonna do a flush on this thing, get the oil all pumped through, try and clean it out, change the filter a second time, put some good stuff in it, and then service the diff and the trans and all that sort of stuff. Change the plugs, change the leads, change the belts, try and get this thing running. Let's drop the oil, pull the plugs, put some lube in the plugs and turn it over. Some more with a battery.
Jump straight in. Hell.
Well, what else are we gonna do?
Got this weird valve saver lube drip feed system that I'm very curious to know how it works, but I don't know if I want to dig into it that far. I've never seen this before. Have you?
Only on this thing.
Is it homemade?
No, apparently it's a thing.
Oh, okay.
He got it installed when he got the gas installed, so I don't know if that's related or just coincidence.
I'm withholding my comments about the gas installation.
Yeah, I don't like it either. There's not much oil in it.
Oh, that's goopy.
Okay, so we've got the plugs out, we've got the leads off, we've got them all numbered so I can put them back in a minute. I've got some auto trans fluid here and a little siphon pump thing. So I'll suck up some auto trans fluid, put a little bit in each cylinder, and then we can turn this thing over a bit better and let the rings free up a bit and try not to do any damage when we actually crank it over for the first time. I'm trying to find the spark plug hole so I can put the tube in so I can squirt some trans fluid in there. There we go.
Oh, you found the hole?
I found it. I cannot get that in there.
Just try harder.
Oh, okay. Why didn't I think of that?
I don't know.
We got all the cylinders lubed with trans fluid, so that was misery, and getting the spark plugs out was pretty hard as well. So now we need to get the oil filter off, change that over, put the sump plug back in, and then put the oil in that order.
Just in case you've never done an oil change in your life.
Yeah, I've forgotten once or twice. And then put a battery in it and try and turn this thing over, make sure it cranks nice and evenly, and make sure the cylinders are nice and lubed, new spark plugs and new leads, and then we can try and fire this thing up. Just crushing it.
It's in a hell of a spot.
It's not too bad, but it is very tight. Oh, I've split the oil filter.
Have you?
It's still tight. Oh, oh.
Are you tearing it in half?
Yep.
That's pretty cool.
It moved a little bit, but now it's just leaking everywhere.
Oh, it's moving.
It's moving, it's just real tight. So we got the old filter off. It is very crushed because it was super tight, but it's off now, so that's good. We've got a nice fresh rag. I'll give this surface a wipe and then we'll put the new filter strap back on. And again, we're going to do 2 oil flushes on this thing, so we're going to use a cheaper filter for the first one, which is a Cooper brand. So we don't know if this car has any fuel in the tank, so we want to disconnect the fuel tank before we turn this over. So we've traced it back to this little solenoid thing, so it's probably gas related, but I'm going to take off this side, which is pre the solenoid, and we can put that into a bottle, and then when this engine cranks over, if it does pick up any fuel from the tank, it'll spurt it out. So that will be okay. And then the other side I can take out and put into a bottle of fuel later. We can fill this thing with oil and put a battery in it and try and crank it. So this thing holds about 4.7 litres. We've got a 5 litre here, so we'll just use that. Fill it all the way up and then run it for a bit. The filter's empty, so it's not going to hurt anything. And then we'll run this for probably half an hour or so, and then change it over with the other lot that is over there. So we've changed the oil, we've changed the filter, we've put some trans fluid in the cylinders. So now what we need to do is chuck the battery in. We have disconnected that fuel line like I said, so we should be able to crank this thing over, see if we've got spark, and also see if the fuel pump is going to do anything. And then just lube everything up, make sure it's nice.
Now, is there a particular reason you chose this battery in particular?
My dad gave it to me, and he's a good bloke. We've got the battery on. There is no smoke yet, which is a nice sign. So I'll go turn the key if you'd like to watch that thing for me and keep you at schnoz sniffing. So we just got the boot open. We're trying to find a isolator switch because this thing has no reds or anything. We can hear relays ticking, we can get spark at the battery, and the key is now turning over, but we're not getting any kind of ignition. So it could be the ignition switch, I don't really know, but I'm going to try and find a switch first.
Oh, where they drilled a hole for the gas? Oh, that's a shame.
Oh wow.
They just drilled a hole and let it fall down in there, because that's exactly where I found it. So we worked it out. It was an issue with the neutral start switch. I don't even need that, dude. I can just watch the sparkles there. Go again.
The sparkles from over here. Now that we have confirmed that this thing turns over, we're going to get some spark plugs, chuck them back in, put some leads on, some nice fresh leads, and then we can try and put some fuel in this thing, see if it fires up, because we know we've got spark. So we need fuel, obviously, which we've disconnected, and it didn't pump anything into that bottle. So the tank may be dry, not 100% sure. So once we put these leads and plugs in, then we can chuck some fuel in it and try and fire it up.
That just looks like too many spark plugs.
It does, doesn't it?
If you can count to 8, let us know in the comments.
I'm going to change these leads over, and I'm going to do them one by one because they're all marked and I don't want to work out the firing order.
So we've got fuel there. We've got a wonderful fuel tank going into the mechanical fuel pump, which is sort of down under the power steering there. You can't really see it. And it should flush out anything into this Coke bottle here. So a twist on the ignition stick. It is not pumping anything.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Excellent. We're going to syringe a little bit of fuel into the carby and try and get the bark off.
Fill the bowl.
Fill the bowl. Okay, so I've covered the carb in WD-40 and a little bit inside and all the linkages and stuff. The butterflies are pretty much jammed shut and you can stand on the pedal and nothing happens. So all of this stuff is moving slightly, but if you get any lower into the actual butterfly, it's all jammed shut. So then I've put fuel in the bowls and disconnected the fuel pump because that's over here in this bottle. And I can't really think of much else other than trying to start it. So let's do that.
All right, take 2.
A little bit more fuel. Let's try again. It's not very interested.
I'm very curious about spark now. It's got fuel, it's got compression. But is the fuel actually getting down the yap?
Enough. maybe.
If you know anything about carburetors, let us know what we're doing wrong.
Oh, there you go. It's not really moving very much. Like that should be moving heaps, but it's not.
That's what happens when you stick something in a container for 12 years next to the ocean.
So after trying to start this thing, the coil isn't producing a spark anymore, so we think that it must have died. So we've tried every combination of spark plugs and multimeters to try and get this thing to fire up. We've put jumper leads on there and it will not produce spark. And then the carb has also got a stuck butterfly and will not open and won't let any air in. So the fuel's kind of draining past it slowly, but it won't let any air in. So that's pretty much all we have time for today. So we'll come back another day and we'll get stuck into it with a fresh day and a fresh set of plans. So it's a new day here on the Falcon. I've just been fiddling around by myself. So I bought a new coil. Turns out this one's fine and the points are actually just like frozen shut or like not enough big enough gap. So I stuffed around for ages, did all the tests I can think of on the coil, and then managed to get the coil to fire and then realized that the points were too closed. So then I've opened them up a bit and it seems fine. So I'll probably chuck some new points in it in a later day. I just want to get it running first. But this old coil does work, so I'll put it all back together and we'll try and fire it up. Put a bit of Start Your Friend in the carby and then we'll try and get this coil to spark it to life. Now this carby is frozen shut. I covered it in WD-40 yesterday and absolutely no different. It's still like jammed shut. So that's not happening. And I have picked up another one, but I want to see if I can fire it on this carby, even if it's just idle or similar. So I will set the camera up and we'll try and fire it up in just a moment. Whilst I was trying to get the coil working, I just bypassed the power straight to that guy, and then this one goes straight to the dizzy, so there's no interruption by the key or anything. But now I've put that back in, the points are all back together, the dizzy cap and rotor are in, and then I've got a plug external just here. So I'm going to try and turn it over again and see if we can get spark there, and if we get spark there, I'll try and put some fuel in it, and obviously put that lead back on. Excellent, got spark there, so now I'll pull that lead off, put the original one back on, or the one that goes to the actual cylinder, try and put a bit of fuel in this thing and see if we can get it to just sputter to life. It's not going to run properly because that carby is knackered, but if we can get it to fire up, I'll feel a whole lot more confident. The fuel pump's dead, the carby's pretty dead, but let's try and get this thing to fire on some Start Your Friend. So everything's plugged back in. I'm still using the jump wire here, but I will change that over once we get it to work. Put some Start Your Friend in there. Well, that's excellent. So it did start, but now obviously we've got to deal with that carby. So I'll try and put a little bit of fuel in there and just see if we can get it to run a little bit longer, because that would be really nice. Let's turn it over. Well, that fired into life. I didn't expect that. So obviously the accelerator was on a little bit and it took off. So that runs, which is great. I didn't want it to go that hard, but here we are. So this throttle linkage is definitely stuck and like nothing is doing anything with the bottom butterfly. So I'm pretty sure it's pretty frozen. So I'll put a little bit more fuel in it and I'll try and get it to idle, but we'll see how we go. So honestly, that's a great result. We got spark and it fired straight up. That's excellent. However, the fuel pump's dead, so it's not getting any fuel, and the carby will not rev. So if you put your foot on the accelerator, absolutely nothing happens. You can't even move the pedal without flexing all the brackets on this end. So yesterday we had Jackson trying to move the accelerator, and I was trying to move the linkage on this end, and I could see Jackson's foot pulling the cable and bending all the bracketry. So that carby is absolutely frozen. But without it, it does run. So I think what I might do is try and get this other carby on there and adapt that stuff to suit, and then we'll try and chuck some fuel in it, make sure it runs like that, and then we can pull the power steering off, pull the fuel pump off, get the new fuel pump on, and then get the new power steering on. So, the old power steering back on, because it is covering the fuel pump, which is a pain in the bum. but it runs, so that's excellent. It's probably a good time to mention that if you're seeing this video, this car's no longer at my house. So my boss, who I'm fixing this car for, he was very adamant that I didn't show this video until this car was back at his place and nice and safe. So if you're thinking about stealing it, don't. Please don't. But anyway, let's get back into the video. Good morning. It's been a week or so since I've worked on this thing, and I have obtained the carby and I hope all of the bits that I need to get this thing bolted on. So today I'm just going to jump straight in. There's no Jackson, there's no friends or anything to help me, so I'm just going to jump in, take this carby off, put the new one on, see if I can get it to idle on that guy. If I can, then I will put in a new fuel pump, and then we'll see how far we can get after that. So there's nothing to it but to do it. So I'll bring you guys in for a closer view, and let's get started. So as you can see, we've still got the old carby on here, so I'm not really sure what is connected and what isn't, but I'm just going to go through and mark what I need to and just disconnect what I can, get this thing off. Then we have a rebuilt Holley 600, which Dale rebuilt just to see if he could really. So this thing he had in storage and hasn't even tested it yet. So we're going to try this thing out, and if it works, I will purchase it. If it doesn't work, I'll give it back to him. So try and bolt this thing on. Got gaskets to go with it. And we just need to get started really. So I'll check you guys on time lapse and we will get started. So the carby is off. Now I can clean that up. And then coming over here, you can see just how crusty the bottom of that carby really is. So those butterflies do not move at all. So the plan now is to fit this Holley carb. Now the problem with that is this intake is a spread ball pattern and this guy is a square pattern. So I've got an adapter from Dale, so thank you very much. This is a red line spread ball to square ball adapter. So there is some more plates and stuff on the engine which I'll have to take off, but then this guy can go on top and adapt what I need to put the Holley on. So I'll dive into here, work out what we're doing and get this carby on. Well, there's a lot of mouse poos in there. So the intake's all cleaned up. I've removed these two tiny grub screws, so I'm going to reseal these and put them back in, and everything's nice and clean. So I'll just put it back how I found it, but nice and clean. The next step is to mock up the adapter plate and the new Holley carb and see where everything lines up, see how it all fits, see which fasteners I require and what screws I need and studs and stuff. So I'll do all that off camera and I'll catch you up in just a minute. So I've had to change gears slightly. So this adapter plate, whilst excellent, one of the bolts is stripped, or the studs, sorry. So one of the studs is stripped out, and the bolts that I needed to hold this thing to the intake manifold, I have 3 of. So obviously that's not going to work right this second. So what I need to do is clean this guy up, try and re-thread that hole a little bit bigger maybe, and then I've also got one of the original Falcon studs, which is the right thread on the top, the wrong thread on the bottom, so I might be able to thread this or tap this and thread it all into there and make a new stud. So if I can do that, I can bolt the carby to this guy, but I cannot bolt this to the intake until I get another bolt. So I'll clean this up, make this nice and ready to bolt on, try and fix that thread, and then I'll have to go to Bunnings or whatever and grab another bolt. So that's a little bit annoying, but this is the next step, so this is what we have to do right now. I got away pretty lucky with that, so I managed to just run the thread down further and didn't have to turn down this diameter or anything. It is just worked out, which is nice. So I'm going to end up cutting this end off and then I'll just use this as a stud. So I need to now try and fit it into that adapter because that's now threaded, this is threaded, so they should go together and then I can glue them in place. Perfect length. So I'll cut this guy off and then I'll glue it in. So to hold this stud in place, I'm going to use a little bit of bearing retaining compound. And then I'm going to put the original end of this stud up. So that will be the nicer part, I imagine. The piece I made should be perfectly nice, but just for peace of mind. So take this guy off. Now I can put a bit of this bearing retaining compound on the bottom half. So you don't need much of this, but I will send it because I don't want to fix this again. Hopefully once that dries, it holds everything in place. Everything's clean and ready to go back on. I need another bolt, so I'm gonna have to go to Bunnings. So I went to Bunnings and they did not have the right Imperial threads. So I had to go to United Fasteners, but I got what I needed to. And I also got an inch longer one just in case I do need to use the spacer that was on the engine. So now we can pretty much put this back together, or at least bolt this guy down and see what our next problem is. So I've got the base plate adapter bolted down, so all of these little threaded guys are all nice and solid now, even the one that I fixed. They're all bolted down, all sealed nicely, so I'm happy with that. And now what we need to do is cover the new gasket in goo and then put the carby back on. So I need to work out which one I need to use, so easy enough. Let's lather it up and bolt it all down. So I'm almost out of time for today, but I've just quickly cleaned up. The camera died halfway through that last thing, so the carby's all bolted down, the fuel is all hooked up, the pump obviously doesn't work, so I still need to dig in here and fix that. Haven't hooked up the fuel accelerator pedal or the trans kickdown or anything like that, but it's all bolted on. We've got the vacuum advance and stuff hooked up. Quickly thrown the battery in and the coil back on, just jerry rig that for now. I've filled the bulbs with fuel, so let's see if this thing fires up. And more importantly, if it does fire up, can I rev it? Because this carby should be free. Well, idle's a bit low, but it runs way better than it did. Well, it works, which is great, but that still doesn't run properly, so I'll have to dig into that tomorrow. It's another new day here working on the XC Falcon. So yesterday I managed to get the carby on. That's about it. By the time I messed around trying to get this thing bolted on, I got called into work and the day just disappeared. So today, what are we going to do? You guys should know. I told you yesterday. Are you paying attention? It's a fuel pump, that's right. I'm going to put the fuel pump in. So that involves us taking the aircon out, the power steering off, and then the fuel pump. And then once the fuel pump is placed, put all that stuff back on. So it's going to be a bit of a pain, but let's get into it and let's just get going. So the fuel pump is Goss branded, so it is a G4861. So it's a mechanical fuel pump and it's pretty simple. We've got a feed and return. I'm not sure which one's which, but they are already set down there, so it's all good. Then we've got this long lever that goes inside the engine and runs off the cam or the crank. In this case, I think it's the crank. Early Corollas, it runs off the cam. So let's dive in, take off all the things that are in the way and try and get to the fuel pump. I stand corrected, so this does run off the cam. It just runs upside down from what I expected. It also comes with a gasket, which is nice, and some instructions, which we don't need. But now that I'm looking at it, maybe I can do it from the bottom. So let's climb underneath and have a look. So I'm under the car here, and it does actually look like I can get to this thing from the bottom. So that should make life a whole lot easier. In saying that, there is a radiator hose in the way, and a few other obstacles, like trying to film this, but we should be okay. The bottom radiator hose that is under here is rock solid and very crunchy. So to get to this fuel pump, I'm going to need to jack the car up, and then we can hopefully wrangle some tools in there and get it going. What do you reckon, Harley? So I've tried a few ways of filming this and there is no good way. So this is the sump, obviously. That's the crank pulley. That's the fuel pump just there. So there's only 2 bolts that hold it on, but there is a few things in the way. So I will do my best and get it out, and then I'll show you what the old one looks like versus the new one. All right, a little bit of time, a few swear words, and the correct amount of fuel drip down my arm. This thing is disconnected. Now we can unbolt it from the block and take it out of the engine. So here we have the old fuel pump and the new fuel pump. They look very much the same. The fittings all look the same, which is super important. But there is one main difference, which is this one will actually go all the way up and this one will not. So I'm assuming that the diaphragm in there is toast, which I can't really check without taking all of this apart, and because it's all stamped, you have to basically bend it apart to get it all to pieces. So let's clean up the mating surfaces and chuck in the new fuel pump. Okay, laying under the car here, there is where the fuel pump bolts to, so just next to the oil filter. And if I get further in, you can see on the bottom left of the screen there, that's where the fuel pump runs on, so that's the front of the can. So now that the mating surface is cleaned, I'll grab that gasket, chuck some nice goo on it, and then chuck the new fuel pump in place. So the fuel pump's back in. If you need to do this at home, the quickest and easiest way is to get yourself a 20 litre jerry can full of fuel and a couple of matches. That was misery. So the top bolt is just so hard to get to. I ended up swapping it to an Allen key bolt, using this end of the Allen key in the bolt and then using a socket and an extension to get some leverage on it. Misery. Don't do it. If you have an XC Falcon that needs a fuel pump with aircon and power steering mainly, just get rid of it, just sell it. This was the worst. So with that done, let's see if it works. If you don't believe me how hard that was, this is how many tools I ended up with. Even the dog tried to help and we just didn't get anywhere. So I think it's tight now. I'm going to see if it actually works. So the fuel pump is plumbed into this Coke bottle full of fuel, resting precariously on some paper towel. And then the top I've taken out of the carby and just shoved it into a Coke bottle. So if this works, we should end up with fuel in that Coke bottle. Let's see how we go. The coil is disconnected, so this will not start. Excellent, so that was pumping through. So now I'll hook it back up to the carby and see if we can get this thing to start up. Make sure the coil's plugged in. Use your leftover fuel in the carb. Way too much. I'd say this carby's no good. So just to be sure, I've replaced the hose clamp up here just in case it was squirting past that. So I'll place the camera in here and see if we can get it covered in fuel. It's definitely leaking. That carby doesn't work, which is not Dale's fault. It's obviously, it was the first one he rebuilt and it was sitting on the shelf for a long time, so the seals could be dried out, who knows. That does leave me in a bit of a predicament because this fuel pump now works and the carby that I fixed now doesn't work, so I need another carby. This thing is just fighting me every step of the way. We've got the man, the myth,
the legend,
legend. What do you think?
It's a very original GXL.
And you were saying this is the GT of the era.
Well, so XC Falcons, you had base model Falcon, then you had Falcon 500, then you had GS, which was the sport pack, then you had Fairmont, then you had Fairmont GXL, and that's what this is. And then you had Fairlane, Fairlane Marquee, and LTD. But
those three were more luxury based?
Those were longer wheelbase cars. So this is the most up-spec sedan, like standard sedan length car.
Yeah, right. So it is kind of like the, not the top spec, but well, sort of.
Well, they deleted GT after XB, and this is XC, so you had XC GS and you had XC GXL. And GXLs were the up-spec Fairmont, which is the equivalent of a GT. But of course, in a GT you always got a 351, whereas on GXL you can get 302s. Which is what this is.
You are schooling me.
Schooled!
Which I appreciate. I did notice this, I don't know if it means anything on this model, but it has the K after the VIN. Does that mean it's a K code, which is the good thing that most people want out of an earlier one?
On that, it just means it's a V8, factory V8.
Okay.
Because if it was a 6-cylinder car originally, that would be a C.
Okay, right.
But on the codes...
What's that pointed stick you got there, bud?
It's an EJ molding from somewhere else. I don't know where it came from. But T code on the engine is 351, and I'm pretty sure that'll be a P if you have a close look.
Where are we looking?
On the VIN tag, or the ID tag.
I don't really want to show it on camera, that's all.
Oh, nobody's going to steal it. Okay, well, that'll probably have a P on it.
There's probably a put over there.
Yeah, so it's...
You guys will never know.
A 302. Yeah.
It is a 302 because it's got 4 9 badges on the side as well.
That doesn't necessarily mean it, because I mean people swap things out. So
This is the original motor. I know that much.
But that being said, my brother had a GXL, which was a factory 302, and we used the original block and put a 351 cranking rods in it.
Yeah.
And it was a 351 by the time we were finished.
Yeah. Well, that could be. This could be like that, but
highly doubt it.
yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, it's the same casting, right? It's a different stroke. Is that how
it's just the
351
piston
works?
length and the cranking rods.
Yeah.
And the cylinder heads are different, but the block is exactly the same between 351 and 302.
Cool.
Useless trivia.
I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, and it's got factory aircon.
And power steering.
Mm-hmm.
And gears.
And it's got the wide radiator in it.
Yeah, he did this for towing. He did a bigger transcooler in there somewhere for towing. I think it's got air shocks on it. And it's got the big tow bar, and he did a bunch of tow pack stuff.
Oh, did he order it new or something, did it?
I believe it was upgrades after a few years. But yeah,
the transcooler's hiding in there. It's between the two. You can see that's
I think he's had it for, nearly since new kind of thing.
75 gajillion years.
Yeah, well, it's a 77, so...
Yeah, so that explains why it's got a points dizzy, because they made these in 78, and I think...
That's when they went electric?
Well, they brought in electronic distributors, and more useless trivia, it's an early XC GXL because it's got the letters on the bonnet, where in the later ones, they got that blue oval. Yeah, so you got rid of these, and you got a blue oval there. So that's how you pick the early and late ones.
Yeah, right. So then your bonnet you could pick if it was an early or a late, because it would have holes there or not.
Well...
Maybe.
Yeah, that being said, it's also been pranged and smacked.
Yeah, well, this has been, it's had some love over the years.
And people seem to think, oh, XB and XC GS bonnets are the same. They're actually not. Some of that stuff is actually slightly different.
Huh. Like the mounting positions or the
yeah, so
shape?
the peg will be the same. The way the catch works, because of this, the XCs have got both the holes, but just straight XBs don't. They've got some other stuff.
Oh, okay.
I could go into the in-depths of all the details of all of the differences forever and then some.
That's fair.
So halfway through XB, you got an update, and they got the ADR garbage in it.
Yep.
So
the emission
you got
stuff.
the later washer bottle and the carbon canister. So the early XBs, so 70, mid 75 and backwards, they were, you can do anything you want with them. After that, you've got to comply with ADRs and stuff like that.
Yep. So the only stuff that was really missing is this trim here.
Eyebrow mold, yeah.
And the washer wattle.
Well, yeah, we got that.
Which is a 70 what? 76 onwards.
thing.
If you've got either of those parts, let me know so I can hand them on to my boss.
You might be able to buy that washer bottle new now.
Cool. But thank you for your input, Graham.
Well, how much do you want?
You can keep going.
Yeah, I'll just have a look at the rest.
I'm not going to run out of tape. That's got the old Falcon door handle problems where it is a bit wonky.
The handle's half broken.
Yeah.
So it's a past. It's quite a spec one because it's got electric windows.
Yeah. I don't think they work.
They have a bit of an issue where they draw too much power and burn things out.
Oh, okay.
So they've got the corded trim. This is XC GXL seat trim only.
Oh, okay. So they're actually quite rare.
Well, yeah, kind of.
In the way that the base Model EJ is rare.
Yeah, so this is XC GXL pattern only.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's factory, looks like it's factory black. So this would have been quite a specky car because it's got an LSD diff because it's still got the sticker on the inside there.
Yeah, right. The wheels haven't turned yet. The back wheel on this side's locked up.
And it's got, is that an 8-track in there or is that a cassette player? I think
it's a cassette player.
I think it's a cassette player.
On the wrong side of the steering wheel.
Yeah, that's where they put them.
Oh, that's a Ford thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
We weren't sure if that was an add-on or if it was a Ford
that
thing.
was an aftermarket. This car's been quite heavily optioned up when it was new.
Yeah, I think he either got it new or got it when it was very close to new and put all the things on it.
And the vinyl roof's in,
Yeah, don't look up there.
I was going to say it's in good condition, but...
Well, the vinyl roof is in good condition. You were correct.
Yeah.
The metal underneath it, maybe not so much.
Well, it's a factory fitted vinyl roof.
Mm-hmm.
Because you could order these without a vinyl roof.
Yep. Is this factory? This moulding?
No.
That's a, like...
It should be a similar style, but it should also be here, not here.
So above that crease or body line or
So
whatever.
that's probably been, you know what happened? So this car's obviously had a quick respray.
And it got resprayed from there down.
No, they painted the whole car and couldn't get the original mouldings.
Just slap them on there to try and make it look similar.
Well, it sort of worked.
Yeah, I was going to just leave that one. I got the other two open after many minutes of frustration. But given that it's sat in that container for like 12 years, it's probably seized.
Yeah, because they work on this, there's a little pivot in there that goes like that, and you push
the
up
lockdown
down,
and stuff,
and
yep.
That bit's working, but this is seized.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'll try and dig into it once I get it actually out of the shed.
You probably won't be able to get the door trim off with the door shut.
That sounds like someone else's problem.
You might just have to work with only going in 3 doors.
That's fine with me.
And the back moulding is bent from the boot lid.
Oh, opening too high?
Yeah, it's probably poorly adjusted and it's caught it on the way up.
Yeah, it doesn't touch it currently, but it's obviously, clarenced itself. It's also the rare Fairmont version.
Yeah, is it possible to open?
Yes, I'll get the keys. What did you just spot?
Oh, it's still got this. It's a GXL fuel cap, but it's also the same as GT.
Oh.
So they didn't have a cap, they have a press on.
Oh, okay.
So that's fuel
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
These are such a stupid thing.
They're so awkwardly sized, like
Yeah,
they're
but
not big enough to get your fingers in there.
You're supposed to use a special triangular key.
You're supposed to use like an Allen key every time you want to use it.
Oh, this thing's crusty.
Yeah, there's a few bits that are not great.
I'm thinking this car was in excellent condition when it went into the shipping container.
Apparently it was similar to this, but...
No, I reckon it was probably a lot better.
Yeah, I think so too.
Some of that boot lid is... Although, mind you, this is the same boot lid on XA, B and C Falcon sedans. So,
also like a base model one's the same.
Well, plenty of like XA to XC, the boot lids are all the same.
Oh, cool. Just
So
the
like I was
trims.
telling you at the wreckers, XA Falcons have mouldings on them, but it's up here. So on GXL,
So that trim is there.
yeah, so this is
right.
GXL and XA only.
Okay.
I've never seen them rust here, that's new.
That's not a good sentence from a guy that repairs these.
Yeah, I'm like, ooh. What is it? You should be listening quite closely to the noise I'm making because that'll tell you how good or bad the car is. If I go,
Yeah.
that's a bad noise.
Not
If
great.
I go, ooh, that's a good noise.
Or you went, ooh, at the fuel cap, so
It was a mixed reaction.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Oh, it's totally worth restoring.
Yeah, it's a great base.
If you wanted to start with a car, this is what you start with. And
Yeah.
what I suggest for this car, if you were to do it, is get it, clean it, polish it, do a couple of dodgy repairs, and drive it for a year.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
See what you don't like about it.
Yeah.
Fix it.
Get it mechanically up to before you restore it.
Yeah.
Because nothing worse than losing your car into a crash shop for several years while they fix endless amounts of rust.
Like your shop by chance?
Yeah, well, it's had a roof rack too.
Yeah.
There and there.
It was a full like workhorse in the back in the day.
Well, I'm just telling you, as someone who lives and breathes these cars, is you're better off just quickly fixing it and enjoying the hell out of it.
Like your green one.
Like the XB, that was a no frills. That car looked like a pile of crap, but it drove beautifully. It was
Yeah.
mechanically.
That was actually a good time. Like when we went for a drive in it many
that was
years
a nice
ago.
car.
Well, thank you for your opinions and your expertise. We're going to make Graham vanish now and we'll get back to the regular programming. So we're just trying to make this thing run, but Graham's just told me these headlights are unobtainium because they are XC Fairmont only, apparently.
Well, they might be Cortina or something pommy, but in Australia they seem to be only in this model of car.
Yeah, right.
And they are really, really ridiculously hard to get.
Good looking.
Yes, I was going for that. I was like, I really need to make a point and going,
They're bad.
don't ever break them.
Yeah, fair.
Because you'll never get another pair. Alright, I'll see you on the other side.
So it's a new day on the Falcon. I have ignored this thing for a couple of weeks. The shed's actually kind of empty now, so I can actually get onto this thing. I can get that wheel off, I can free up the wheel, I can service the diff, get to the fuel tank, try and sort this thing out. I've got some new gaskets for the needle and seat because they used some sketchy ones that weren't fuel safe, and they worked for a little bit, but now they need to get replaced properly. So today's plan is to do those gaskets and then start on the back, try and get the tank drained if there is anything left in it, and free up that wheel. So let's just get started. These little screws need to come out and put the seals back in, and then it will run and not leak, which will be a good start. So those seals are replaced. It's just the upper and lower gasket from just here. So as you saw the other day, we had an XA Coupe guy, Mr. Graham. He got this thing running nicely, so I'm pretty confident up here now. Let's jump to the back, get this thing in the air, and service this diff. So I got the Falcon in the air here, got the wheel off, and I expected a drum brake. I don't know if this is normal for a Falcon, but it's obviously what we're working with. So I'm gonna have to try and free this up. So I'll probably pop the caliper off, take the pads off as best I can, and then this surface is disgusting, so I'll get a Scotch-Brite and try and clean it all up. So I've got the brake caliper unbolted from the diff, so now the axle does rotate, the disc and everything, but the caliper is pretty much seized to this guy. So I'm trying to pry it off, and I'll catch you up when I have, but it is quite on there, so that would be why it wasn't spinning. As you can see, the pad is rusted to the rotor. So I managed to get the caliper off to the side. That was actually really hard work, and I had to use pry bars and hammers and all sorts. So I've got the disc off here, and you can see it's pretty crusty, and you can see where the pad was sitting just here. So I've got a Y wheel on a drill, and I'm going to just chuck some brake cleaner on this and just give it a quick clean up. And then the other side, I've already sort of started. It's coming out better. It's not great, but it's better. And you can see even still where the pad was like rusted on. So I'll clean this up as best I can. I'll pull the pads out, clean those up, and chuck it all back together. So I've got all the brake cleaned up. It was still really hard to get back on, so I reckon this might still be a bit sticky. So I'm gonna put you guys on the tripod, and I'll try and start this thing, and while it's in the air, chuck it in gear, see if these wheels move. Hopefully this one moves, hopefully the other one moves, and then we can service this diff, and then we can try and drive it outside, I guess. See how we go. So got this thing running, got it in gear, wheels turn, which is great. Had some issues with the carby. Spoke to XA Coupe guy, Graham, and he said rip it off, put it on the bench, pull it apart. So I did that, spoke to him on the phone, and he sort of talked me through it. So cleaned everything up, and it's all ready to go back together. The next problem is that this needle and seat ripped straight out of the float roll. So that just, when I undid it, pulled all the threads with it, which is awesome. So that's probably why that one was leaking. So now I need to try and find a rear bowl, so I think Dale will probably have another one. So I'll try and get that off of him, and if not, then I can probably try and drill that out and make a little adapter. The next problem with that would be I'd need to get a tap for this size, which is super fine thread imperial, which I don't have, and then it would just turn into, you know, more problems. So I'm a bit stuck at the moment, but pretty happy with how that's working. The back is actually turning and everything. We just got to work out this fuel issue. So I'll catch you up when I've got a solution for this. Okay, quick run down to the part shop, Dale's house. Got a new bowl. So this one is stripped out. So I had to get a new one. So now I can pull this one apart, clean it up, hopefully get this thing back together. I still can't put it on the car tonight because I don't have the replacement gaskets for these. They'd probably be fine, but they feel a bit weird and they're covered in fuel. So I'll get some new ones. They're only $5 each or whatever. So swap this over and get it all back together, and then I'll call it a night for today, and then get onto this first thing in the morning, try and get some gaskets. So I got the carb all back together, and this accelerator pump linkage was all bent, so I've straightened that out as well. So now when you turn the accelerator, the actual pump moves, which is nice. Also, without this on the car, if you put the accelerator on, the vacuum secondaries obviously don't open by themselves, but if you push on them, you can actually open them, which I couldn't do that in the car. So I was talking to Graham about it, and he reckons that the carby on the adapter plate is a bit wonky, and they must be getting caught up on the actual adapter plate. So I'm going to wait until tomorrow. I'm going to get some new gaskets. These ones are probably fine, but they feel a bit fuel soaked, and they're only a couple bucks. So hopefully that fixes that problem, and then I'll make sure that I get everything on there square, and we should be back in business. But you can see now that that accelerator pump actually does get moved, which is nice, and it lines up properly. Before it was only just sitting on this arm, whereas now, even at either extreme, it's still on there nicely. What a pain in the bum. So back together. Hopefully this works tomorrow, because I'm pretty sick of it. I don't know what else to do. If this doesn't work, then we're gonna have to get a new carby, which I really don't want to do. So the next thing on this is to service that diff and try and empty the fuel tank. Graham was saying that there's a seal on the fuel tank like inlet to go to the front, and apparently they're a huge pain in the bum, and there's no drain bolt, so that'll be fun. So I'll probably just put some fresh fuel in it and try and run it through and just pump it all through the tank and flush it out. So that's another job for probably tomorrow, and then hopefully we can just put this carby on, clean that fuel tank out, and it's good to go. And I just need to service it again, and we're pretty much done. So battery's on charge, intake's all apart obviously, got belts to put on. This has been fighting me, and I am not a Ford man apparently. Another new day here in the chop shop. Got some gaskets. Put this carby on, and hopefully it doesn't leak anymore. Okay, carby's back on. I put a little bit of fuel in the bowls. Let's try and start this thing up, and hopefully we don't have any fuel leaks and it actually works this time. Still leaking. I'm so very, very frustrated with this Falcon. If this was mine, I would push it outside and worry about it in another 6 months. But this is not mine, so I need to keep working on it. It's driving me nuts. Why is that leaking? I just resealed all that and fixed everything, cleaned everything. Why? So I've given the carby a bit of persuasion on the needle and seat, and now it seems reasonably happy. I can actually turn the choke off now, which is nice. So I actually think it's working, but why do they keep getting stuck? They're brand new needles and seats. What? Why was that squirting straight up? For God's sake. Why does full throttle stall it out? I'm sure there's a million people screaming at their TVs right now, or their phones, saying that I'm an idiot. Possibly. But also, this thing is just odd. It's squirting fuel out of here occasionally, which then idles it all up, obviously. If I give it a rev, it dies, so I'm thinking it's too rich, so I need to turn that down. It's just a bit of a pain. Not really sure how to fix this. Okay, I'm having mixed success with the front end of this thing. So I've taken the front bowl off, taken the needle and seat out, and got them sitting in some metho. I'll do this for a little bit, and then I'll put it in some acetone. I've got some thinners and try all of the things. So while that's happening, I'm going to jump onto the back, service this diff, and have a look at this fuel tank. So I won't bother you guys with the details. I'll just get that done, and we'll be on to something new in just a second. So I wasn't going to bother showing the diff and the servicing, but I have cleaned up the rear housing. Give it a quick wire wheel, got all the gasket goo off of it. It's got a little tag on it, spin resistant diff. Not limited slip, spin resistant. So it's probably worth noting that this is a Borg Warner, not a 9-inch. So I don't know what diff this is, but spin resistant apparently. So I'll seal this back up, get some fluid in there. Okay, so I've taken this front bowl off again, cleaned it all out again, reset the needle and seat a little bit lower, and also tested the float to see if it's cracked or anything, which I did test before, but I just wanted to try again. So that is all fine. It still floats, which is great. Put a filter on, unrelated to this problem, just for later. I will remove it from there when I've run a bit of fuel through it and put another one on somewhere else that's a bit more tidy than that. So now I have fuel everywhere, so I'm going to have to wait for a little bit for it to all evaporate, but I'm a bit stuck really. I don't know what to do. I've done a bit of Googling and it says that the needle and seat might be at the wrong height, or the needle and seat is bad. So if this lot doesn't work, well, first I'll adjust it down a whole lot, which I've already done a fair bit. If that doesn't work, I'll put it on the back one and see if the problem follows it to the back. So struggling, but we're getting there, I guess. We're trying to tick things off the list. It's just a pain in the bum. So I'll catch you up once I can run this thing again, and we'll see if it's any better. Okay, it's been about an hour or so. I've let this thing evaporate, so we should be good to go. We'll try again. I'm pretty over this, so I'm hoping it works. Oh, we might be in business here. I think it might be fixed. I hope so. I'm so sick of this thing. So I thought it was leaking at the back, but it might have been a leftover from earlier today. But it seems like it's working okay now. So let's fire it up again. See if it continues to work. Alright, I think we're on a winner. The accelerator pump might be leaking a little bit, I'm not 100% sure. So I'll have to keep an eye on that. But the rest of it seems like it's actually working for once. So now I will try and go from the fuel tank to the fuel pump and get to run off of the fuel tank. Okay, so fuel in the fuel tank, 2 rear fuel lines replaced, front fuel line replaced, into the actual pump now. So we should be able to get fuel up to this filter from the tank. I'll put fuel in there. So now we just need to crank it over a bit and see if we can get fuel from the back to the front. And I think the carby's working now, which is good. And I've zip tied the choke open or off because I got sick of putting a screwdriver in there. And that's pretty much all we need to do. I need to put diff fluid in, but the sealant around the rear hat is still drying. So I'll set you up on the tripod again, and hopefully this thing runs off the fuel tank for the first time in 12 years. So let's see. It'll run for a little bit regardless of what's left in the carby, so hopefully we end up getting some fuel from the tank. It doesn't seem to be picking up fuel from the tank, but it is running for a very long time if it's not. It's just about to die. Alright, so we know that the fuel pump works, we know that the carby works. So now either the fuel line from the back to the front is blocked or it's not picking up in the tank. So now that brings me to the tank again. So I was warned by XA Coupe Guy that this would be a problem, and that if I take that sender out of the tank, I'm probably going to have to jump the tank on the floor. And if I could take the sender out, I'm probably going to have a hard time getting it to seal again. So that sucks in this particular example because I have a tow bar. So I'd have to take the tow bar off, then take the fuel tank out, then take the sender out, then try and get the sender to seal again, and then put it all back together. So I'm going to try and not do that, but I'm not really sure how else to tackle it. As I've said before, this is frustrating. So I was hoping to be running and driving and ready to go this time yesterday. So back on the back of the car. So it's another new day on the Falcon. I have a fuel sender gasket. Let's get onto this Falcon, pull this thing out, and get this thing actually going today. I've many hours, and hopefully this doesn't fight me as much as the last few days. So I'm laying under the car, so excuse the camera angle, but there is the fuel sender, just there. So I've taken the wiring off already, that's easy. I'll take the fuel line off, and then this is a little ring that needs to get spun to undo that. So I've got a wire brush and all that sort of stuff. So I'll get it out and show you what the inside looks like. Okay, so we got the sender out, and it is just as crusty as expected. So this tube is already looking pretty horrible, and it's also covered in rust, obviously. And that's supposed to be a filter sock, I'm pretty sure, which looks like a solid piece. So I'll try and clean this up and try and get some like air or water or fuel or whatever through there, and then we can put it back in. Once again, Mr. XA Coupe Guy was correct. This would probably be why I'm not getting fuel. That is blocked solid. And the sock already ripped off because it was also full of absolute gunk. Excellent. So after about 40 minutes of some contraptions, a bunch of stuff leaked out, got all this stuff out of it. Now I can actually get some air through this and some fuel and brake cleaner and all that sort of stuff. So I think this should be good to go back in. Obviously no bottom sock, but a new replacement one of these is like $170, and the bloke that owns this is not that interested in spending more money. So I'll try and chuck this back in, and then we should be able to get fuel from the tank to the engine and actually start this thing from the key with no assistance. Let's see. It's time. The back's all back together. That was a bit of a mission. So, chuck the battery back on, crank this over. Hopefully it'll suck fuel up from the tank to the filter. That filter is going to get a hell of a workout because the back is grotty as. So I will need to replace that again. But let's try and get fuel to this filter. Right, I'm going to crank this over. You guys tell me if there's fuel in the carb. I'm leaving the ignition off so it doesn't actually try and fire up. Look at that! Alright, let's put this ignition back on and see if it'll fire up. That fuel's already a disgusting colour, so this is not going to love it. I'm going to have to replace that filter in about 10 minutes, I reckon. It's not a great colour, but it's not got that much sediment in it. Seems like it's still not picking up fuel from the back. So that might just be what was in the lines, I'm not really sure. I'll jump into the back and put some compressed air in there and see if we can blow through some of the crap from the lines. So I'm getting the fuel line from the fuel pump to the fuel tank a blow through with the air compressor, with the fuel cap off obviously, and we're getting air through to the tank. So now we should be getting fuel back from the tank to the carby. So let's try again. Definitely working now. Thank goodness. That is a huge milestone. So now the fuel tank and the engine work together. And it all actually works. So now I just need to clean up some of this wiring and clean up a bit more of the stuff that I've sort of rigged. And I need to put some diff oil in the diff before I forget, so I'll do that now. And I'm going to have lunch, let this place clear out because it's a bit smoky. Might try and put this thing on the ground. We're going to say move it, but I don't really want to crash into any of this stuff, so I should probably check the brakes. So the diff's full of oil, the fuel tank's working, the back's pretty much done. The front I still need to clean up like I said a second ago. Chuck this thing on the ground. I need to try the brakes before I do anything else. And I don't want to do that right now, so I'll probably go have lunch and then I'll sort this front end out, get all this all dialed in, and then I'll tackle that problem, which is probably going to not be fun. Okay, I'm back from lunch. Quick clean up around the Falcon, and I want to try and touch these brakes and see if they're actually going to stop me. And if they will, I will try and move it forwards and try and move it backwards and call that a win, and then I can clean up all the engine bay. Because I need to know if these brakes are going to work before I fight them for 3 or 4 days unexpectedly. Okay, I haven't pressed this. I'm pretty sure Jackson didn't press it. That actually feels like a pedal. feels kind of rock solid though, so that could be a bad sign. All right, let's fire this thing up, put it in gear, see if the back wheels will go and also stop. That seems like winning. Let's put this thing on the ground and move it out of the shed. Well, I did it. It ran, it moved, it stopped, all by itself. I mean, I was driving obviously, but all by itself. What a mission this has been. It's not finished yet, obviously. There's still a bit more to do, but there's something I've been wanting to do since this got here. It's time. So I've had a quick clean up in here, swept the floor, got all the parts together, got the Falcon back in the shed. So I'm going to probably leave it here for today, and I probably won't get back to this thing for a few days. But at least it runs and drives, and it is a little less dusty. Obviously it's not clean, but it's much better than it was. So I will catch you up on another day. It's been 6 weeks since I worked on the Falcon. What have you guys been doing? I built a Camry. It'll be built by the time you see this, but it's not quite finished. I don't remember what we were up to, so we just watched the video so far, and turns out I need to do a bunch of stuff. And I've already forgot what they were because they're on the list that we didn't bring over here. So I'm back with the list. We're gonna do the accelerator pump. We need to do the wiring in the engine bay because I've pulled it all apart and jumped a bunch of stuff, so we need to make all that work again. We got the brakes that need to be bled. They do work, but we just want to bleed them all through and check the lines and stuff, make sure that they're not going to explode while we drive this thing. Then I noticed that there's trans fluid on the floor on the other side of the car. So last time I drove this, it was just out to the front and back in again and let it sit for a long time, and now there's trans fluid on the floor. So I have to look into that, which is going to be fun. Then the power steering also needs to be checked and topped up and all that sort of stuff because I haven't looked at it at all. And then the last thing on the list is the accelerator cable. So that's not connected to the new carby. There's a linkage and stuff that is not doing anything. So that needs to be reattached. So we're hoping to try and get a bunch of stuff done today and hopefully find the end of this Falcon so we can drive it and be done with it. Okay, so let's see what we've done. So we've got the Holly 600 on here. The choke is cable tied open. The fuel filter is very brown and obviously putting in a lot of work already, which is kind of good, kind of bad. We've got a few cables that are off the coil here, which is also not bolted onto the engine, so I need to fix that. What else we got? The belts, we still need to change those, because that one's cracked and not very good. The power steering, we need to fill that up, and the radiator we need to fill up too, because I haven't done that yet either. And that's all I can see right this second, so add all that to the list. Let's get into it.
What was wrong with the other multimeter?
It was blue.
It was blue.
Yeah.
It looks like your battery's blue.
Yeah, I have it wrong.
Hang on, let me get you guys in here to have a look at this. Have a look at the colour of that fuel, guys. That is ordinary.
So I've just hooked up the coil again to the actual wiring in the car instead of having some jumper leads and stuff. So hopefully try and start this thing, we should get a spark and it should turn over. But the key is doing that thing that it
Oh, I
does.
forgot about the key. It's getting fuel.
Probably check it's getting spark again.
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got spark.
It's got a spark. Okay.
It's not very strong, but it's got spark.
Just a little weight there under where the red line.
Yeah? It's sealant.
Oh, cool.
It's like this paste stuff, and it never really dries. It just makes everything look wet, which is really annoying. Give the accelerator a little blip.
Hey?
Just give the accelerator a press.
Like and subscribe so this is worth it, please. Right, going by the time lapse, that took 51 minutes to get that fan off.
I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed. That was misery. There's just no room to get your hands in there, but it's off now. So we're getting the belts off one by one.
Making sure they're the right sizes.
Yep, putting them over there. And then
Filing for later.
Then we put all this stuff back together and then the belts are done. It's very basic. It's just taking forever. Like everything on this car.
This car just hates existing.
It does a bit. After probably 2 hours of fighting with the fan, we've got the new belts on. I've left the aircon belt off because the aircon doesn't work and we don't want to run it while it's dry. So fans all back together, radiators all back together. It was a huge pain in the bum. We've added a service loop to the fuel line. So the fuel filter is now out of where the cover will be for the air filter. So we can attend to it on the side of the road when it inevitably gets blocked. So that's pretty much all we've got done so far. It's been a huge pain in the bum. Cleaned up all the coil wiring. We need to work out something for the accelerator, and then we're just going to put some trans fluid in the power steering and top that up and tick another thing off the list. But it's already like 2:30, so we've wasted a lot of the day fighting with these little gremlins. So we've worked on this thing for most of the day. Now we're both sick of it being in here. It's been in here for way too long. So we're going to move it outside and then probably move it back inside. I don't know. We're just moving it for the sake of moving it.
I'm going to tell you what, dude. I'm going to close this door, though.
You are?
I'm going to close this door.
Good choice.
Yeah. I just wanted Jeff to move this so we can find where this translator's come from. You can only idle it out. The accelerator's not connected, the cable. Got a hell of a stance to it. It looks good from the back, I tell you.
Looks good not in my shed.
It does, it looks great not in your shed. What if it's a clearance thing for the boat ramp? Because it goes up at the same angle as the tow bar.
Do it again.
Temperature's cold. If I click it to accessories. Oh, shit's going on.
It's climbing, so it's probably just shorted entirely. Because it's not hot at all, so
No.
it's probably just shorted. We've gotten back from lunch. I've degreased and washed this like 3 times. Need to do it again. And the Falcon's still out here, and Jackson is fiddling. You found anything interesting, Jackson?
$2.
Found $2.
And a Red Bull can
Red Bull can.
from 2005.
So as you guys have seen or will see, the Camry is this close to done, and Richo's been wiring it for quite a while. It's a bit more involved than we thought, and we can't get wiring diagrams. So if you see that, it's coming soon. Now the Falcon is super close to running and driving. Well, it already does, so I just need to make it actually work and be happy together. So I actually labelled this with red, so you know it's the positive, and remade a couple of wires there. The earth is fine, and then I had to make an accelerator cable linkage because the factory one didn't work with the Holly. So I've got this guy welded up, and there's a 90-degree angle line on the bottom of here, so it squares itself on the carby and then it doesn't move. So it's all bolted down nicely. You can get pretty close to full throttle, not entirely full throttle, but it's pretty close. So that's all done and adjusted. The only problem is there's nowhere for the kickdown to go, so I'll have to mention that to my boss. I've cut down the rod for the air filter as well, so that's good to go. So the only thing I have to do now for the top half of town is plumb in some breathers. So this filter plate came with like stamped holes all ready to go. So I will drill some of those out and make a little boss for these to plug into, so that'll be all right. And then I just need to go around the engine bay and see what else isn't connected or what needs to be connected, because there was a lot of stuff sort of just in the engine bay. They weren't doing anything, but there was a lot of just hoses in places. So I'll have a good look over all of it, make sure there's nothing dangerous or live wires or whatever, which I don't think there is, but I'll just check. And then I need to bleed the brakes and give this thing another service, and it's good to go. So it turns out the air filter hits on the fuel line very slightly because it comes straight out from the side of the carby. So that's the original fitting. And then I've got this, which is the same size hose and a different thread on the other side. The inside diameter is the same. So what I'm thinking, so I have a bunch of fittings, but nothing the same thread as this, or not much the same thread as this. So if I lop that off, drill it out, and then put a tap through it, I should be able to screw all of that lot in there, and then we can have a 90-degree fuel line. and I'll seal it all up obviously. So I'm going to have a go at cutting and drilling and tapping this guy, and then chuck up the lathe and square it all up if I need to, and then we should be in business. So there's the original fitting, taking it down, threaded it, put a 90° on there, threaded in that one. So they're all sealed. Let's put it back on the car. Hopefully this clears everything. Well, it clears everything, so that's nice. It's pretty good. And then we got the service loop for the fuel filter over here. So should be nice and accessible, and then we can cut this down when we're done. So the next thing to do was the breather line for the engine. So that goes into the air filter now, and then I'll put sealant around it. It is tapped, but it's only really thin steel. So sealed it up, ready to go back on. There we go, breather's all hooked back up. Just gonna do one more hose clamp. Got this big old service loop on the fuel, so I have to cut that off when we get to my boss's place. And other than that, I think we're done engine wise anyway, other than another service. Alright, so we got the Falcon running here, drove it out of the shed. So the idle is still bumped up from the other day, so I need to turn that back down later. But I'm going to let this thing run and idle for a while, or a bit above idle, and just see what it does. Just letting the doors air out a little bit. I'm going to clean all this stuff out, so I'll do that in a minute and get the vacuum going because it's pretty gross in there. But we're going to try and drive this thing back to my boss's place tomorrow morning. So I still need to bleed the brakes, change the oil again, vacuum the interior, turn on the idle, just a few little things. So I'll do all that tonight and tomorrow morning, and we'll be on the road. So last time you guys saw this car, I was about ready to drive it out and drive it to the owner. And since then, I've had a bit of a problem, and the rear bowl was leaking again. So I've got new gaskets for the rear bowl. I'm going to reassemble that, and then I'll run this thing again, drive it out of the shed, leave it idling for a while, and see if I've fixed the fuel leak, because I'm not driving it anywhere with a fuel leak. So it was super close before, and now I just need to put this gasket back together, and then still do the service and stuff that I spoke about last time. But I just want to make sure that it's not going to set itself on fire first. Okay, it's been 40 minutes. Let's see if this thing leaks. Everybody at home, cross your fingers, because I don't want to do this again. Well, I stopped the leak, so that's awesome. Managed to get it out of the shed. It's running like a bag of poo still, and gave it a small rev and popped the muffler out of it. Well, I fixed all the leaks, I did all the things, and now it's blown the muffler out, won't stop backfiring, the front's leaking again, and it's also backfiring out the front. So I'm super sick of this thing again, so I will get back to you in a day or so when I have another solution. This thing is cursed, or the carby is a toilet, or something. I'm so done with it. It's another new day on the Falcon here, so I've just tried to set the fuel float levels, and the back one is either sticking or not working or something, and I've absolutely had it with this carby, so that's coming off, and I've got a brand new one to throw on. So hopefully in about 10 minutes this thing will be working and back to brand new. So pain in the bum that I couldn't get this to work, and I lost a lot of time whilst trying to make it work, so that's pretty annoying all around. But I'll go get the new one and show you what I've got, and we'll try and get it on. This can go in the bin, and here's what I have to replace it. So I've got a Holly, it's an 1850S, it says it's a 600 CFM universal carb. So this thing's a square bore, so we'll still need the adapter, and it's brand new from Outlaws. It was $724.50 I think. So let's get this out of the box and see what it looks like. So here we have the brand new Holly. It is a genuine article from Outlaws, so should be hopefully pretty good. So I'll read the instructions just in case there's something silly I need to do, but overall looks very much the same, just, you know, new and should work. Look at that, wow. I hope this works. So the Holly is bolted on, straight out the box. I've just opened up the choke, that's it, and the fuel has drained back into the pump, so that'll take a little bit to prime, and that filter is filthy because it's obviously picking up a bunch of crud from the tank. So this is the first attempt at a start. So obviously it's going to take a minute to get the fuel pressure, but I'll get it fired up and I'll show you what we're working with. That's already filled up. So that's pretty good. Got the new carby on, got fuel to it, got the squirters working, battery's flat. Battery's on charge. And now that. Great. Day 653 on the Falcon. The rain got a little heavier, so I put a bag over the window. It wasn't too bad, but I don't really want to leave this thing in the rain, but it wouldn't drive back into the shed, of course. So let's look into this carby and actually get this thing running, and then Jackson will be here shortly, and hopefully we're going to try and drive this thing back to the owner today. Let's see. So I messed around with this for a long time. Mr. Jackson's here, and I fiddled with the carby, fiddled with everything. I wrote down the original specs where it was set up, and turns out the plugs were fouled. So now it works, and it idles. How good.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it. Loud, dude. Oh, thank God for that.
Huh?
Yeah, I think if your neighbours are going to complain about any of your cars, it's going to be this one.
That's louder, isn't it?
No. No.
Really?
Yeah. This is by far the loudest.
They're there, they're not great.
Yeah, they're there until they're not.
We still need to bleed the brakes and give it a second service, but we're just going to take it up the road and see if it actually works. The speedo actually works. Second works. That's nice. It's not incredibly smoky. I wasn't the brake as well, by the way.
Yeah, I did see that.
Run great.
Give us a jandle.
Oh, shocking.
It's not bad. Brakes
Like
seem to.
Huh?
Is it? Are you just leaving it? Oh no, you're going for the gears.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 'cause it's got no kick down.
Yeah, but it should like still pick up the gears and stop and stuff. Like it must stop. It should be in first again. But it won't like give you 6 or 8. It won't just like take off.
Yeah. No, just,
It's not loving it, but it works.
sounds like it needs trans fluid.
Nah, it's the XLO, the other like carnage bogging down.
Oh,
The trans actually feels quite good.
I was just thinking it sort of does sound like it's slipping, but
You reckon?
yeah.
Yeah, it feels like trans fluid now.
Yeah.
Now that it's like a little bit warm. You are correct.
It's probably running on the awful fuel it's in it too.
Like the brakes are, work.
You still want to play them?
I reckon that would actually come good after a bit longer, hey?
Yeah.
Like another 20 litres of fresh fuel and actually drive it for a bit.
Yeah, I agree. How's the temp?
Pegged still.
Pegged.
It was pegged when it was cold, remember?
Yeah, that's true.
Alright, well that's a successful test drive. Second service, lead the brakes, hit the road.
It's so quiet.
It's actually pretty loud.
It's very loud.
So we've got all the spares loaded up, got the brakes all bled. Luckily we could do it without jacking the car up. And then we've serviced it for a second time. Put the air filter on. Battery is tight and we're all ready to go. Checked all the fluids and stuff. We're going to swap and get some fuel. And we're going to stop and get some fuel filters because it's pretty cloudy and it's only been running for 2 or 3 minutes. So Jackson's grabbing his stuff. We should be ready to go. This is absolutely ridiculous. My house is right there. We've reversed out of the driveway. It's idling perfectly fine. Foot on the brake. That's probably the first time it hasn't actually stalled.
It's actually idling.
Every other time it has stalled immediately.
There it is.
Cool, we moved a meter. The only thing we can think of is that this fuel filter is muck and it's also cloudy. So it ran mint when we changed it for about 5-10 minutes and then now it's garbage. So I reckon we go to the parts store, get a few of them, try and make it back to the boss's house. Good thing we keep these reliable Toyotas everywhere. So I went to Sprints and I bought every single fuel filter they have, which is 6. If we don't use them all, they want them back because they don't have any more in stock. And I bought a few rolls of tape for the Camry, so that's a later job, and it's a brake cleaner. So I'm going back to my place, so fingers crossed this all works. So the second fuel filter, this is the third one. Second filter looked like that. And the third filter is brand new right now. Let's see if this thing moves. It'll idle, not very well. You try and rev it, it breaks up. Put it in gear, it still stalls. This is driving me nuts. I am so very, very over this. So even with a fresh fuel filter, this thing still runs really horribly. So we just tried to undo the dizzy and give it a turn and try and get the timing light on it and make it, timed. The dizzy is corroded into the intake cover or whatever it goes into. It is absolutely corroded in there and will not move. Right, so this is not where I wanted to end this video. So I was really hoping to have this thing running and driving and drive back to my boss's place after 12 years sitting in that shipping container, but that wasn't meant to be. So unfortunately this thing is going to head home on a truck and he can deal with it at a mechanic shop or whatever. I think the fuel tank needs to be cleaned, dropped, cleaned, either replaced or just completely flushed and make sure it's all nice and fresh, because I think what's happening is it's still got a bit of grit and maybe rust in the fuel tank and it's picking it all up and sucking into the carby, because those fuel filters we put 3 or 4 in and they all blocked up within 2 or 3 minutes. So if you can imagine what's getting stuck, there's probably a bunch of stuff that's getting passed that's all getting into the carbies and making them run really badly. So whilst editing this video, I've looked back through, and whilst it was hooked up to the Coke bottle under the car, this ran a whole lot better. Even with the other carby, and I didn't obviously try this new carby with the Coke bottle, but the older carby ran quite well until we put it on the tank. So I'm thinking that what's happening is the tank is sucking up some crap. So that's super unfortunate. It's just a huge job. I've tallied it up, and on camera I've already spent 12 full days on this thing. That's not including the half days, that's not including the stuff I didn't film or Jackson's time. So that's a lot of time, a lot of hours on this thing. We're doing at least 8-hour days on this thing to try and get it back and running. So it's pretty disappointing to call it quits here, but that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you can't win. So that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you've made it this far into the video, and we'll see you next week.